All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in once again. This is the Hot Route Takes podcast. We are on NFL Week 9 already, just passing the NFL trade deadline, halfway through the season already. The second half of our show is going to be focused on a lot of those trades that went down, some big names moving, especially on the NFC side of things. But first, as always, on our preview shows, we're going to circle back and touch on the two primetime games we got in NFL Week 8. One of them involving Christian's Chargers, a home beatdown of the Bears, 30-13 final there. And the Monday night game was another AFC West team, the Las Vegas Raiders falling on the road to the Detroit Lions, 26-14 there. Since both of those teams are AFC West teams, I'm going to let Christian give his game notes on both of those, and we'll get right into the preview show.
Yeah, my big just takeaway on the Bears real quick is just Justin Fields is being missed. I mean, DJ Moore is not what he needs to be with this new quarterback in place. Badgett's trying, but I mean, rookie quarterback, D2 quarterback, can't expect too much from him. And just the running game, if it's not there, I think you're going to see what the Chargers kind of did to the Bears. But on the Chargers side, I will say, Quentin Johnson got involved. Austin Eckler got involved mainly in the passing game. It just the defense did get 2 turnovers, but I'm ready to kind of see what we do next week. It is against the Jets, so it's going to be a non-powerful offense again. But I guess for an offensive standpoint, I want to see what our offense can do against, arguably one of the top units, I think, and we'll get to that in the game preview. But just with the Chicago side, I just don't know really how to take this game as a Chargers fan just because the competition is so, I ain't going to say different, but it's not close to me. And then the Lions game and Raiders, I'm going to start on the Lions side, just make it quick. My guy, Jamar Gibbs, I think David Montgomery, he might have to work for that starting spot, hopefully, man. But I think, my big takeaway from this is just, a better team. I think, we've seen the Lions kind of slip up. Jared Goff looked good in this game. St. Brown, he needs to be talked about, I think, a little bit more on how good he is. Then Sam Laporta, a touchdown. I think he gets one, I feel like, every week almost at this point. And then, Gibbs in the running game is pretty much what the Lions did, and I think that's what we expect this team to do week in and week out. Then on the Raiders side, this is maybe a longer story, but Jimmy G did not look good. He came back. This was his first game back from, I believe, a concussion, and then he had maybe, I think, some other issues. But they did get Josh Jacobs going. I think that was the key for this offense to get going. But, after that, they couldn't pass the ball. I think a receiver at halftime didn't even have a catch. Cannot happen in the NFL. I think, your leading receiver was Josh Jacobs. Cannot happen when you have a Devontae Adams, when you have a Jacoby Myers that you went out and traded for. I just think, I'll go ahead and talk about this real quick with y'all. But, everybody knows at this point, head coach is gone, GM is gone, no moves happen. So I'm just very confused on what the Raiders are going to do moving forward and what their plan is. So I don't even know how to look at this team anymore because it's all new stuff, except for they didn't get rid of, I think, some key pieces of players they could have traded out and got something for to make this a better turnaround. I think maybe a little bit quicker than what they're trying to do, I guess.
Yeah, we're going to touch on Josh Jacobs' name later in this pod when I get to my Ravens focused trade deadline recap. Pretty much his name was floated around. And honestly, I think for Las Vegas, this boils down to ownership. As long as Davis has been the owner since he's taken over, I don't see a good direction ever been implemented. It's been churning in and out head coaches more frequently than bad. Even the worst tanking teams that have been bad for a while, those head coaches seem to at least get a little more leash than what you do in Vegas. It's quite literally one mediocre year and then another bad start, and then they're out of there. The one time they made the playoffs was the interim guy, and then they didn't even keep him. So I truly don't know what's up with Vegas. I never will. I just feel bad for Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs really having to kick the dust and starve and disintegrate down there. Anything on it, Brian? On the McDaniels firing? I know it wasn't a shock.
No, we kind of saw it coming. He kind of underperformed, and it didn't look like things were getting any better. And it looked, pretty similar to his last tenure as a head coach for Denver. A mediocre at best first season, followed by a disastrous second season that got real bad real quick. And I think it's obvious at this point he's just not a good leader. and is not going to be a good head coach in the NFL. Hopefully no one else gives him a chance, but he got a second chance. So
He'll
Yeah,
be back in New England.
agree with you there, man. Yeah,
My little
yeah, I
thing,
would
just real
not
quick,
be
I'll hit
shocked
on
for
with,
that
I
one.
think the
But given how
Raiders
that
is,
offense has looked,
I think Derek Carr was, I think, very much keeping that boat afloat. So I think that's my big takeaway is how much maybe that is being missed. And I mean, this is a guy that got them through a lot. I mean, John Gruden, what happened there, just, I mean, a lot of backlash from maybe what their players have done in the past. I mean, we know about like guys like Henry Ruggs and what that team's been through as a whole. So I think Derek Carr was a lot to that locker room, and it kind of shown, I think, this year.
don't disagree with you there, and that's maybe something that's undervalued more about Carr's professionalism and whatnot. He's not the most, or he's not the best quarterback. We've all touched on that, but at least he held the locker room together somewhat in Vegas. That's a hard thing to do. Obviously, it's you see it falling apart right now. So we'll knock it off with the Vegas coverage right now and get straight into our NFL Week 9 preview picks. We didn't do this on the recap show, but I would like to say the standings very quickly before we get into our picks. All three of us right there. Brian's still up top, 72 and 50. I am a game behind at 71-51, and Christian is just 2 games behind at 70 and 52. So all of us staying right there next to each other. And we've got some games I'm sure we'll differ on this week, and maybe someone can take this top spot from Brian. Let's try to take him down here, Christian. We're going to start it off with the Thursday night football game. The Tennessee Titans traveling to Pittsburgh will be Will Levis' show now. He looked great last week. Looks like that's going to be the show going forward in the rest of the year. Whereas Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett is questionable. Minka Fitzpatrick, who exited the game early last week, is out, already listed as out. So big losses for Pittsburgh. As good as Levis looked, Kenny Pickett is questionable from what I've saw on the
he
injury
said he
report.
was going to play
Okay.
verbally.
Okay. Well, I was picking Pittsburgh anyway, but that's nothing to do with Kenny Pickett. It's just their defense. And Levis looked really good last week in the action he got, but Pittsburgh's defense usually is a different story. You partner that with a Thursday night primetime game, that environment. That's really all I need to pick Pittsburgh in this football game.
Yeah, I'm picking Pittsburgh as well, and it comes down to their defense. And I'm not sold on the Will Levis show yet, but he did play well last week. Let's see if he can repeat it against a really good defense.
Man, I really did want to kind of go Tennessee, but after just hearing Pittsburgh defense, man, I can't do it to myself. I'm picking Pittsburgh just off of T.J. Watt, and I think they're going to make Will Levis look like a rookie quarterback this week and not what we seen last week.
Yep. Like those picks, guys. We're all three on Pittsburgh. Hopefully it goes the other way, honestly, if I'm rooting for anyone. Getting to the Sunday slate of games. Best matchup of the week, perhaps going to be the first kickoff in Germany, a 9:30 kickoff on the Eastern time zone. It's going to be Brian's Miami Dolphins taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, both 6-2 teams. We already previewed this matchup a little bit in our latest pod episode, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. I'm just going to give you my pick and a few short words. Went back and forth, really split down the middle on the pick 'em here, 52% rocking with KC, but I went with Miami in this one. I'll make Brian happy, and I'm just seeing more consistency from the Miami offense right now, and that's what got me. And then Jalen Ramsey being back is a big shot in the arm for that defense as well. So give me Miami.
Yeah, defensively, we're getting a lot of guys back. Jalen Ramsey coming back, Xavier Howard coming back this week, Javon Holland coming back. Neither one, Xavier Howard or Javon Holland, played last week against New England, and I think just having all of our guys on the field for the first time this season is going to be a big deal. As the defense has started to gel a little bit this season. Jalen Ramsey's already there. He didn't really need the opportunity to gel. He's there. And so I think being healthy on defense and just being at full strength, and then getting Teron Armstead back potentially this week, getting Connor Williams back, potentially Robert Hunt back, just a lot of reinforcements coming in. And I expect us to be ready to play because, the guys are probably hearing the rumors and the narrative out there that exists for Miami that we can't win the big games. I think this is a perfect opportunity to go and do that in Germany on the big stage against a really good football team in Kansas City. And guys got to be ready to play. I am going to pick Miami here in a game that I do think Miami has a chance to make a statement in with this defense and the offense playing as well as it is. Nick Bolton being out, obviously hurts Kansas City's defense a good bit. He was kind of the leader of the defense, and so we'll see. But I am going to go with Miami, potentially 2-score game.
Yeah, I did think long and hard about this game, went back and forth, but I ultimately went with KC. I just think kind of the opposite, like of what Brian is saying. I think KC, what happened last week to them, I think this week is going to be, people are kind of, I think not writing KC off by any means, but they're kind of thinking, well, this team's not as good as they was. I think, I can say the dynasty's dying, but this team just isn't what they've been in the past, and they've been hearing that since pretty much the start of the year. So I think this is a game, like Brian is saying, for Miami. I think the opposite. This is a game for KC to make a statement and be like, hey, we're still one of the top teams. I think this is a game, we've seen Miami with top quarterbacks. His defense hadn't looked that great. So now they're getting a Patrick Mahomes. I think Travis Kelce. I just see a big connection with those two guys during this game. I understand Ramsey and them are there, but just it seems like when big time quarterbacks come, I think this would be where Miami can change a lot on how I feel about them after this game. But right now, I'm on that, side of it right now, Brian. It's just when big time players or big time quarterbacks come in, it's just Miami doesn't look like the same team.
That's fair, but those big time guys do make a lot of teams look like that. So I'm not going to harp on anything there too much. I think it's going to be the game of the week, a shootout, if I had to guess, over there in Germany. So that'll be a treat for those international fans. Moving on, guys, we've got the Minnesota Vikings at 4-4 traveling to the 4-4 Atlanta Falcons. No Kirk Cousins. We've touched on that, out for the year now. So it's kind of hard for me to pick a Minnesota offense to muster anything without Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins. So for that reason, give me Taylor Heineke and the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Taylor Heineke and Atlanta Falcons as well. I think this offense will just be a little bit more consistent, and the defense has played pretty good all year. So I'm going to pick the Falcons here.
Yeah, I went just Atlanta off of, Hall, I think is definitely getting the start. No way you're throwing Joshua Dobbs out there right now. So just Hall, young quarterback, rookie quarterback. I'm going to go with, Taylor Heineke, who's been here now for a couple seasons in that league. And I think, like y'all are saying, the offense got, I think, take an upgrade this week with him being the starter.
All right, next up, guys, we've got the 1-7 Arizona Cardinals going on the road to Cleveland and the 4-3 Browns. Didn't give this one a lot of thought. Browns are a better team. They have a really good defense, and despite Deshaun Watson still being questionable, I don't think it matters if he plays or not. Cleveland ground game is still a decent unit, even without Nick Chubb. So I think that's enough to get this one done and move Cleveland to 5-3.
Yeah, I went with Arizona as well. Josh Dobbs being shipped out of town also hurts for Arizona in this football game. And Cleveland's defense is good, so I'm going to pick Cleveland.
Yeah, I just went with Cleveland because I think just this defense is going to eat up. I think this Arizona offense has not been anywhere close to elite. I think they've been decent, but I just see Cleveland's defense having a field day out there, and it really doesn't matter what the offense does this game. I just think the defense is going to take over the game.
All right, next up, we've got the 3-5 LA Rams traveling to the 2-5 Green Bay Packers, and Jordan Love, a guy we touched on a little bit on last week's pod. Looking for a bounce back, both of these teams. Give me the Rams. I trust that offense more right now, especially with Cooper Kupp in the fold now. Rams, I think it might be a close game, though.
I went with Green Bay. Matthew Stafford being questionable, Puka Nacua being questionable. I'm just going to go with Green Bay here. It's kind of don't really know what's going to happen in this football game, but I'm going to pick Green Bay. Not a whole lot of reason behind it, just gut feeling.
Yeah, I can't go with Green Bay on this one. Jordan Love's been looking for a bounce back now for 4 weeks, so I went with the Rams just because of the offensive power that's there and Puka Nacua. Just the list go on with Cooper Kupp. I know he hasn't looked himself, but just too many weapons on this offense for Jordan Love. Just hasn't shown to be able to keep up with offenses like this yet. So just easily, I went with the Rams.
All right. Next up, we got an AFC East foe of Brian's, the New England Patriots, sitting at 2-6, hosting the Washington Commanders, who traded away a few key pieces. Brian, I'll let you touch on any game notes you have and give us your pick.
All right, so New England is banged up right now. They've been suffering injury bug real bad this year, losing players left and right, it seems like. And they did lose Kendrick Bourne for the season with an ACL tear. Jonathan Jones, Devontae Parker, Dietrich Wise are all questionable for this football game for New England. And they can't really afford to lose too many more players as it is. And so, yeah, Washington did trade two of their premier defensive linemen, but they still got really good defensive linemen on that D line. So I expect them to be getting after Mac Jones in this football game. And Sam Howell to continue to build on his strong performance from last week with a pass rush that's going to give him a little bit more time. You know, he likes to get sacked. So I'm going to pick Washington here.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Mine's
Christian.
definitely Washington. I think Jahan Dotson got involved last week. I think that's something they just built upon. So that's been something they've been talking week in and week out on. It's getting him more involved. So I think Washington kind of take this easily. Kind of what we've seen. I mean, they were marching down the field on the Eagles. Kind of impressed me a lot that they were able just to do that and have a shootout with that team. So I see them really handling this game pretty easily because I just don't see Matt Jones going week in and week out playing like he has been
Yeah,
at
all
this current
Washington has
stuff.
to do is copy paste their two Eagles performances this year. And my fault, Christian. I didn't hear you. You cut out for a second there. Um, yeah, uh, as I was going to say, just all Washington has to do is copy paste their two Eagles performances this year, and I think they're in for a good day. Give me Washington on the road to move to 4-5. Next up, guys, we've got the Chicago Bears, New Orleans Saints. Pretty lackluster matchup, really. No one to really keep your eyes on besides outside of some playmakers on New Orleans side. But because they do have those more playmakers, I'm going with the Saints to get to a winning record at home against the Bears.
Yeah, it's looking like no Justin Fields again this week. I'm going to go with the Saints here. Offense looked a little bit better last week. Hopefully, they can build some momentum against a not so great defense. Yeah, so I'm going to go with the Saints.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm going with the Saints. Just I think Alvin Kamara is going to have a field day. I think him or maybe possibly Derek Carr could have a field day in the passing game. I think one of them are just due for a big game against the Chicago Bears defense.
All right, next up, guys, we've got the Seattle Seahawks at 5-2, traveling to Baltimore to take on my Ravens, who sit at 6-2 right now. One of the better games of the week, in my opinion. It's not a lot of great matches out there, but this Seahawks offense, especially the passing unit against my Ravens defense, I think is one of the better matchups of the week. I like our defense to be really physical, which you need to be against a huge body like DK Metcalf, and get to Geno Smith and make him uncomfortable. With the way the defense has been playing, I think the offense does enough to uh, finish drives and let Justin Tucker get those extra needed points we're probably going to need in this game. I expect a close one, but maybe like a 24-21 type game ish. Give me the Ravens at home, move to 7-2.
Yeah, I went with Baltimore as well, and I think it ultimately comes down to that second level Baltimore has just playing a good football game and holding Kenneth Walker to a reasonable amount. So, yeah, Seattle's offense really runs the run game first and then kind of builds off that in the pass game. And so I'm going to go Baltimore here.
I went with Seattle. I just think this is going to be a very physical game. I just can see Kenneth Walker, DK Metcalf kind of wear down this defense eventually, maybe open some stuff up for Geno Smith. But I think this very much could be a very old school game. I think a very like bunch of hard hits. I think this is going to be a great game to watch. But I just like what Seattle kind of has, at least on their offense side. Just Baltimore, I understand it has looked good a couple weeks now, but I just still cannot get all the way behind that.
All right. Next up, we have the 3-4 Houston Texans at home against the 3-4 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Two teams coming off losses, looking to rebound. I kind of went back and forth on this one, truthfully, but I ultimately landed on the Texans. Not a lot of confidence in that pick. I think it'll be a very close game, and if Baker keeps the ball or keeps from turning over the ball, I like the Bucs' chances better. But the way Houston's defense has played in recent weeks, I think they're due for a big play out of Will Anderson or someone along that line. So I think that'll be the difference, and I'll take Houston to get back to 500.
Yeah, it's starting to look like Baker's starting to revert to his old ways. I am going to pick Houston in this game, although I'm very aware that Tampa Bay's defense has definitely overachieved this year and is pretty good. So Houston, but not the most confident in it either.
Yeah, I'm not buying the Baker on his old ways. I think just the competition's been a little bit tougher these last couple of weeks. So, and then they got White last week involved into the passing game, so I think that's going to maybe possibly open up this running game finally. But I just think Houston, what I've seen against a Panthers team, that we've seen this offense being very high power in Houston, and it kind of just died out. I mean, I just see more, I think, from Tampa Bay week in and week out before I can jump on this Houston. I mean, this was a team that just hasn't really proved a lot in years past. So I'm not going to be all in on a team that's got a little bit of hype around it right now. So I just think Tampa Bay defense too, young quarterback, they can maybe cause them to make some errors.
All right, next up, we've got the team that handed Houston a loss last week, coming off their first win of the year, the Carolina Panthers hosting the Indianapolis Colts. As good as the Panthers, well, as well as the Panthers defense did play, maybe an outlier for the year so far. I think they're improving, and Bryce Young is looking better each week. Still, not enough to let me pick them over the Colts, even at home. So give me the Colts in this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Colts as well, and credit to Bryce Young Company get some things going last week on offense without a running game to support it, and but ultimately I think it's gonna come down to the Colts just being able to run the football at will, run it right down their throats, and really just control the game at the line of scrimmage. I'm big Colts.
Yeah, I went Colts just because, like Brian just hit it on, the Panthers has no running game at all. I just cannot. You can't win games without a running game in my book. So I just think with the Colts, they're getting Josh Downs more involved. Pittman's been having up and down weeks, but the running game, like Brian says, has been consistent. So I just seeing the Colts really doing whatever they want against this Panthers defense right now.
Yep. As we move into the late window of kickoffs here, next one up could be really considered the toilet bowl, if you're asking me. Vegas Raiders at home against the 2-6 New York Giants. Two good running backs that could have been moved at the deadline. We'll talk about that more later in this pod. Ultimately, I think Jacobs has a little more help around him. It is going to be a new quarterback, so I'm not too confident in this pick, but I've got the Raiders pulling this one out.
I picked the Giants. I expect a big day from Saquon Barkley.
I believe right now, I think is what O'Connell's going to be the starter. I mean, we've seen some good things, some bad things out of him, but I just think, like Chase said, there's too much power on this offense. We hadn't seen much out of the Giants at all this year, so I went with the Raiders. I just think with Devontae Adams, what we've seen, this wide receiver crew did nothing last week. I just don't see that happening for 2 weeks back to back. So I went on the Raiders just because I think, this is a big win for a locker room that's been broken, and now they're finally getting changed. So I see a lot of players playing with a lot of heart out there on the Raiders side to kind of, prove that, hey, this was a coaching problem, not a player's problem.
All right, we got three more to get to here before we get into our takes on the second half of this pod. First one is a mouthwatering matchup, truthfully. Dallas Cowboys traveling to the 7-1 Philadelphia Eagles. Is this the week Dallas finally gets that marquee win, pulls off a big, not really a big upset. They're a great team, but they just need a big win. They haven't felt like they hadn't had one. They got pummeled by the Niners on the road on Sunday Night Football. So establishing themselves as a threat in the NFC, this game can go a long way. I wanted to do it, but Eagles at home right now are looking just a bit different. I think they're energized by the stuff they're building on offense. A.J. Brown's play week in and week out has just been something special. So give me the Eagles at home.
Yeah, I went with the Eagles as well. They're just continuing to find ways to win. I expect the same here, and I can say the opposite about the Dallas Cowboys. They're finding ways to not win at times when they play competitive football teams like this one. And so until Dallas proves otherwise, I'm going to continue to pick Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it short because y'all kind of went on each way you could go with Dallas. But I went the Eagles. I just think, what we're seeing out of A.J. Brown, easy pick for me because they just find a way to win no matter what. But A.J. Brown, big day. I expect nothing less.
All right, this Sunday night football game, guys. This is a mouthwatering one for me. We touched on the end of the pod last week, all the 6-2 AFC teams and how we wanted to rank those. I think the next two teams ready to break through into that upper echelon are these two on Sunday Night Football. both established, both proven themselves in the past. But 5-3 start for Buffalo, a 4-3 start for Cincinnati, a little slow out the gates. That said, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, great QBs. Two MVP picks on this pod. I had Burrow, Brian had Josh Allen. Which one pulls it out? I know it's tough to say that now, but we're only halfway through this season, Brian. As hot second half from either of these quarterbacks, we saw Cincinnati reel off maybe 8 straight games last year behind Joe Burrow. Buffalo's totally capable of the same thing.
Yep.
Went back and forth. It's home game for Cincinnati. I think they could. They've shown signs that they can make this offense what it was and what it has been. That said, I think Buffalo's just a little more motivated. Also, I like the trade they made. We're going to touch on later in this pod. So I think it'll be a very close game. But in the end, I've got Buffalo pulling it out.
I picked Cincinnati. I think Joe Burrow is playing good football right now. I think that the pass rush for Buffalo has not been as great as maybe they had hoped. Von Miller is kind of not quite lived up to expectation, maybe a little slow coming back from the ACL tear, but I'm going to go Cincinnati here, and a lot of it has to do with Joe Burrow and company just finding that rhythm and just performing well the last couple of weeks, particularly last week against a good 49ers defense. So, Buffalo has had their moments where they have not exactly been at their best, and Josh Allen has continued to have really high performances and really low performances. So I'm just not so sure I can count on the Bills in this one, but fully aware they are a very good football team. But I'm going to go with the Bengals.
I went with Buffalo. I think, last year in the playoffs, this is a team that got Buffalo out of the playoffs. So this is already a lot of blood in this game already, just what happened in the past, what's been said on both sides. But I just think, Stephon Diggs, what's kind of, how he's kind of not been himself. I think, definitely last week we didn't see much of him, but I think Josh Allen played a great game. But I just think, Buffalo, this is time for them to, like we've been saying about Miami and KC, this is their moment to win a big game. And, hey, we're still a dominant team. This is not our end of a Super Bowl run. So I understand that, I will give Joe Burrow credit. They're getting, Tyler Boyd and a lot more people in this offense and just getting touchdowns. It's not all Jamar Chase, but I just can't go against Buffalo right now. I just can't do it.
Sorry, Christian, you just cut out there for a second. Hopefully it's good on the pod end, but sounds like 2 out of 3 on Buffalo right here. I think it's going to be one of the game of the weeks and one I'm really looking forward to watching. So last one here we got to get to before we get into our trade talk is the LA Chargers traveling on the road to the New York Jets on prime time. As Christian touched on earlier, I think the matchup to watch is the Chargers offense versus the Jets defense. That's really the marquee one in this football game. I ended up going with the Chargers because I don't see Justin Herbert being held under 20 points. It'd be rare for that to happen. And I don't see Zach Wilson establishing himself enough, even if the Chargers secondary has been suspect at times. Don't really see him getting above 20 in many football games. So give me the Chargers.
Yeah, I went with the Chargers as well for a lot of the same reasons. I just don't believe in this Jets offense. And although if there is a potential opportunity to get the run game going, it is here. Although I don't see it happening still. Their offensive line been banged up. Their center, they're down to the third string center last week. So, just not so sure on that. And then Justin Herbert, like you said, I expect him to put up some points, even against a good defense. So I'm going to go with the Chargers.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Chargers. We've seen the Giants get home last week a lot, so I expect Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack to get in the backfield very quickly. And like Brian said, my only worry to definitely be Breece Hall having a field day. But other than that, I think easily a Chargers win.
Yeah, I definitely think you guys need this win more as well. As we've talked on the AFC, you got those 4 great 6-2 teams, and you throw in Buffalo, Cincinnati. That really just leaves one last playoff spot. You got good teams like Pittsburgh, Cleveland, all those other guys in there. Someone really good is going to be left out this AFC side. So taking care of business is vital for your Chargers, and especially a game like this. So that's all we got on our preview picks for this week. We're going to get into all the trades that went down on NFL deadline day. Give our thoughts on each of them, maybe some grades if we feel like it, and then at the end, we're going to touch on the moves our teams made or lack thereof, and how we feel about that, if we agree with what they did, and what we're looking like going forward in this NFL football season. So first up, guys, we've got Chase Young from the Washington Commanders, former top pick, going to San Francisco. The rich get richer. They sent a third round pick to Washington for Chase Young's services. I don't know if I had to guess, it's probably a rental, but when you have Brock Purdy as your quarterback, you have salary cap to extend Chase Young if he performs well. So we will see, but I like the move. San Fran's already a really good defensive unit. Having another pass rusher is never a bad thing. You can never have too many. So I like the move, and really on both sides. If Washington didn't think they were going to keep Young, he's kind of been off the field a bunch since they've drafted him, and just the name value isn't there that you would think from a top pick to have that like sentimental value towards the fan base. Not the hardest thing to depart with him, regardless of the talent and the ceiling he has. So I think a good job on both ends. What's your guys' thoughts on this trade?
Um, Man, like you said, the rich get richer. This D line is extremely talented. Chase Young, Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, Nick Bosa, with Randy Gregory and Cleveland Farrell as backups. I mean, that is ridiculous. Just
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous. And Chase Young, I think, can have an opportunity to make a big impact in this game, more so than he has so far in his young career. If he can stay healthy, I expect him to do big things in this 49ers defense. And man, just made themselves even better.
Yeah, I think this is a great trade. I think, it's what Nick Bosa and Chase Young getting back together from Ohio State. I think that's pretty neat. But, my big takeaway, I kind of told Brian off the pod, just Nick Bosa hadn't looked himself. I think that's kind of what this deal is, too. So I think this is more of a, hey, this is our run for a Super Bowl. So let's make a safe pick just in case something does happen. It seems like, history always for this team is injury. So worst case scenario, one of these guys do go down, or if Nick Bosa is dealing with something, they still have an elite edge rusher when he is 100%.
Yeah, good motivation to maybe pick Nick Bosa's game up for the rest in the stretch run in the NFL football season. Don't hate that from San Francisco's side. Moving on, we've got another Washington Commander defensive lineman moving teams. It was Mr. Sweat going to the Bears. I've really talked myself on both sides of the fence with the Bears because it seems like a lot to give up a second round pick for Sweat. He's not. Whereas the Ravens last year gave up a second round for Roquan. I think Roquan's one of the best at his position, whereas Sweat's a really good football player, but is he one of the best pass rushers in the league? I'm not really ready to say that. That said, if they're ready to extend him and build something on this defense, you partner that with the fact that they're going to have a top pick this year in their own record. They're going to have another top pick in the Carolina record. You take those two picks and you nail maybe offensive line and receiver or something on that side of the ball, you could build something very quickly. So I see what they're doing here. Maybe they're trying to just get good quicker and add as many good players as you can and figure the rest out from there. Second round pick, I don't know if I would have gave that up for Sweat, but I don't hate it if they extend him, as I said. So that's where my head is at on this trade. What about you guys?
I like the trade. I think it's a really good ad, and I think he's worth the second round pick. I don't exactly know how old is he.
He can't be 30. Yeah, there's no way he's 30 yet. He's got to be like 27-ish if I had to guess. I'm
That's
going to
what I
look
was
that up right
thinking. It's just not loading. But um, come on, man. I just want to see how old he is.
now. Montez Sweat. He was born in 96, so he is my age, 27.
27. Yeah, I think that's still going to be within their competitive window to win, and I think he is one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. He has continued to be just consistent week in and week out. He's had some big games as well. But Montez Sweat, I think, is just a foundational piece for this defense. They kind of need help on the D line anyway, especially their pass rush. They invested some early picks last year in Zach Pickens and Gervon Dexter. But just to have somewhat of a mentor for these guys to look up to and learn from. And I think this is what he does bring to the defense. And I'm sure they're looking to be competitive as soon as next year. So I think it makes sense. It's a good ad at the trade deadline in my eyes for a second round pick.
Yeah, I think my big takeaway was I think it's a great addition, but I think with that first round pick having two of them, I think that's maybe they're showing their hand on, hey, we're going to spend one of them, but a team can trade up and get this other one, and we can get some more picks. So I think that's maybe an idea they're going ahead and thinking about, like, hey, we can get this guy for a second round pick, build something on this defense line. Nobody that we're looking at right now. It is early in the draft season, but we don't see nobody with his talent that we can take in the second round. And I mean, I think they have the money to spend on him, so they can go ahead and pay him after this season too. So I think it's a great addition, and they could trade that first round pick, either theirs or the Panthers. I mean, so I think they can get more picks, and it'd be a later first round pick, or they can get, I mean, a second round pick and something else from a team for that first round pick. So I think just looking ahead in the future, I think this would be a great trade looking back at it.
All right. That's all for Washington. They obviously have depth on that defensive line, and with Allen and Payne extended and in house for a while, these two rental players obviously expendable, and maybe they're still a good football team if they can shape the rest of the roster out. We'll see, but interesting moves to move on from Chase Young and Sweat, as two were really two pillars of that defense. So we'll see how that unit looks for the rest of the football season. Moving on here, we got kind of a marginal move, but one that wasn't unexpected. Christian kind of hinted on this after we talked about the Kirk Cousins injury. With the Vikings sitting at 4-4, we weren't sure that they were just ready to mail it in, especially with the NFC having really a playoff spot up for grabs if anyone's there to take it. So they made that move for a quarterback. They traded for Arizona's Josh Dobbs. I'm not sure if he's going to be the starter right away, but when all you have to give up is a sixth round pick to push that quarterback room, not the worst move. That said, even with whoever it is under center, no Justin Jefferson for right now. I don't expect Minnesota to be a good team, so I can't really grade this one. If he leads them to a playoff spot, very good trade, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think it's just a good opportunity to get a capable quarterback in house to evaluate the rest of your roster and see what you do have. You do have a rookie receiver in Jordan Addison. I'm sure you want to see what he can look like with a capable quarterback. You don't really know what you have in Jaron Hall as far as is he a starter caliber quarterback or what, but I would have liked to see him out there just because I kind of thought he was a decent prospect coming out of BYU, but I do think you do need a capable starter. And they don't really have anything behind Jaron Hall, so having another guy in house is just good. And so why not for a sixth or seventh round pick?
Yeah, my big takeaway was just we seen what Josh Dobbs has done with this Arizona team. So I think the Vikings has also seen that, and they know going forward they won't have Kirk Cousins. I think off of the books after this year. So like Brian said, I think this is maybe a season they can kind of look at what they have with Josh Dobbs at least behind center and say, all right, well this is what we have with him. I mean, he's nowhere close to maybe a Kirk Cousins, and this is where he led us. So they kind of maybe can tell them what their future is with him moving forward is how I look at this move. But I think it's a great move to, like Chase said, the division's not easily winnable, but I think the second place is really theirs for to win or lose at this point. So I think it's really just to show what they have this year, get the second place, say they made it to the playoffs, and then from here, hey, what are we going to do with this team? We've seen what Josh Dobbs did, and we've seen what Kirk Cousins has done. So where are we going forward?
Yeah, something I didn't even hit on, but honestly, it's a good look to not mail it in for guys like Justin Jefferson. Like you, obviously, he's going to warrant a payday here soon and an extension. So the look of just mailing it in and not addressing any type of move there would have been bad from Minnesota's front office. So to keep Justin Jefferson happy, that alone is worth making this trade to me. So we'll move it on, guys. One of the under the radar moves of the NFL trade deadline, Mr. Leonard Williams of the New York Giants going to Seattle for a second and, or do I have that right? Yeah, a second and a fifth round pick. Wow. I mean, with Dexter Lawrence in New York, Williams obviously expendable, and Seattle's looking to beef up that interior defensive line. Don't blame them at all. Teams have had success running the ball a little bit on them, and the interior pass rush, really overall pass rush for Seattle is a bit lacking. Good move, I guess, for Seattle, but I don't I think it's a marginal one. Not maybe the difference in a playoff win, but not one. It's still they're a ways away from competing with Philly and San Fran in my mind. So don't hate the move either way.
I think it's a solid move. I think exactly like you said, it just beefs up their D line a little bit more. They had a rookie that got a lot of snaps and Derek Hall that maybe wasn't quite ready yet. And, I know they view themselves as contenders, so bringing in a guy like that who can improve your run defense and your pass rush is, I think, a pretty solid move. But I do think they overpaid a little bit.
I'd agree.
Yeah, I mean they did just pick up. Goodness, drawing a blank. The guy from golly,
Draymond
the
Jones,
Edge. No, goodness, can't even think. Anyways, they
Frank
did pick
Clark.
up a guy on. Yeah, they picked up Clark. I think. I mean, I think they're seeing something on the D line, so they went and got an edge guy already. So I think they're just trying to build upon this. I think they're really. I think what they're trying to do is build something to maybe slow down Christian McCaffrey's how I look at this. They know who's in their division. They know what they're going to do. So I think it's more for maybe a 49ers standpoint that, hey, we need to beef up this D line to when it comes later in the season and playoff football. We know what our weakness been. So I say we go ahead and nail it down now. I understand. I mean, I don't maybe like a second round pick but I mean, I think it's good just because, I mean, the 49ers is in this division. You have to be able to stop the run.
Yeah, I didn't touch on that, but maybe that's what they're looking at. Seattle's actually in first in this division with the 49ers three straight losses. So, but that said, they have a gauntlet coming up in the schedule. They start with us this week. Then they got San Francisco twice, Philadelphia and Dallas. I think there's that's the run of 4 straight games or 5 straight games or so. So they needed something better in the run department on defense. This is a step in the right direction. They're going to have to come out of these next 5 weeks with a couple wins if they want to flirt with taking the division from San Fran. Uh, Although, good move. He may have overpaid, as we touched on, but at least they're putting in the effort and going for it. They know they're a playoff caliber team, so kudos to them. Moving on, we've got Rasul Douglas from the Green Bay Packers going to Buffalo for a third round pick. Love, love, love this move from Buffalo, honestly. After the White injury out for the year, I thought that Buffalo secondary was very lacking on corner pieces. The AFC quarterbacks we've touched on in numerous times on this pod, who you're going to face week in and week out. You need good corners. You need really good corners. So beefing up your depth there is not a bad move at all. If Buffalo wants to come back and take this division from Miami, they need to take care of that head-to-head matchup again. And the secondary facing a Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle second go-round in Miami with the corners they had in-house, I didn't like those odds. Good move for Buffalo for me. I give this one an A, maybe a B plus. Good move.
Yeah, I think this is a great move. They've suffered the injuries, like you said, Tre'Davious White and Kuyer, Elam. So getting a guy like that who fits the system to a T, because he does. He's perfect for this zone match defensive system. That's just kind of what he's always been good at. Not much of a man guy, but very good at zone, very intelligent player. So good ad by them and good value. And, Buffalo's got him in the contend window. So getting a guy that is a little long in the tooth for a team that's rebuilding is a good trade in my mind.
Yeah, I think this is a great trade. I mean, this is a team that just picked up, I mean, Josh Norman. Nothing against Josh Norman, but, we're not going back in time. The cornerback room needed some help. So I think this is just a great addition with all the injuries and a guy that's coming from somewhere cold and going somewhere that's cold. So I think it's a perfect match in that also. But I just think, Buffalo needed this, and I think it maybe shows a little bit on the Green Bay side that, hey, we're just trying to go young and try to rebuild this thing all the way.
Yep. All right, last one, guys, we got to get to here is a marginal type move, but one worth noting. Detroit picked up another receiver, Donovan Peoples-Jones, for a sixth-round pick. No cost here, just a depth piece, someone to share the workload of wide receiver 2 or 3, get in that mix, and stop teams from keying in on Amon-Ra St. Brown. For the cost, don't hate this move at all. Just another target for Jared Goff to work with. So good move for Detroit in my mind.
Yeah, this one kind of sucks a little bit because it's kind of an indication of what they think about Jameson Williams, first round pick from a couple of years ago. It was struggled to stay on the field, struggled with injuries, got suspended, but also has struggled with drops. I know he's had a good amount of drops. to start his young career. I hope he turns it around. Physically gifted, extremely fast, but this is not a good sign for Jameson Williams.
I love the pick up. I think for a 6 round pick, you're not going to find a wide receiver. I think with his potential, I mean, he's shown flashes in Cleveland. At this point, they don't have a quarterback, so I think maybe there's a lot more talent there to be shown. That's just he's not in a good spot to really show his talent. But I remember at Michigan, he was a great receiver in college. So I think moving forward, this maybe can be a guy that can definitely be a number 2 for them. I think the Lions really don't have a number 2. It's really just St. Brown and whoever else. I mean you can say Sam, the tight end's been their number 2,
Laporta.
but
Laporta.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's really
Yeah.
all you can say. And I know what is Marvin Jones left the team, not a part of it anymore. So they had an opening for a
Josh
Yeah.
receiver
Brown.
piece. So I think I think it was a great move for them. I think this is a steal in my eyes. I mean, heck, if I knew he was going for a 6 round pick, I know we hadn't talked about our teams yet, but I'd love to.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
send a 6 round
I was
pick.
about to
Heck,
I was about to say it, Christian. That is the perfect segue to get into our where our heads are on each of our teams' lack of movement on the trade deadline. And if there was a team, I think that was even if it was a depth piece like a Donovan Peoples-Jones looking for a receiver, I thought I would have signed up Christian's Chargers. But given how his rookie wide receiver played in this primetime game, maybe they believe in that in house and what they have. Christian, where's your head at on what the Chargers did or what they didn't do at the trade deadline? How do you view this team for the second half of the year? Do you wish they made a move, and what area, and what you got for us?
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna just keep it kind of short for the Chargers. Just it's kind of hard to spend any money when you have 2 defensive end that's got more than half your salary cap. But I mean, I think you could have added maybe a cheap guy somewhere, maybe a corner piece that we kind of needed. I think still at this point with J.C. Jackson didn't pan out. So I think a corner would have been nice, or maybe an extra wide receiver. Just because I mean, we seen Joshua Palmer last week already go down with a knee injury, but came back. But I just think 1 or 2 injuries on really I think any position on this team, it kind of don't look too good very quickly.
All right, yeah, I'm kind of with you there, Christian. They already just need to turn things around as far as putting wins together. That's not going to come from an outside source. I think it's in house right now, and just need more from the defense. That's all that is. Justin Herbert to stay healthy and on the field and produce like he can, they'll be just fine. So, Brian, your Dolphins, you mentioned a offensive lineman maybe being a need. Not a lot of those guys. You rarely see offensive linemen moved at the deadline. That's a hard position to fill. I'm kind of there with you. I wouldn't mind seeing a upgrade at left guard for the Ravens, but that's just the way it is. NFL trade deadline. It's not like other sports, MLB, NBA. NFL may want that type of movement, but this is a sport you can't just come in, plug and play, and adjust to new systems. It's kind of strange to see headline players. That's why it's mostly pass rush, corner, like those techniques travel everywhere. Um, that said, where you at with your Dolphins? You wish they made a move anywhere, or are you just fine with in house?
No, I think they're opting to just kind of go with their reinforcements that are coming in that have been injured. Teron Armstead, I touched a little bit on this earlier in the episode, but guys are starting to become healthy. We kind of got hit pretty hard with injury bug, and Xavier Howard coming back, Javon Holland coming back, Robert Hunt, Connor Williams, Teron Armstead, Devon Achan's coming back after the bye. So I mean, we just got guys rolling back in, and so I think that's kind of where our heads are. We only have one guy that's kind of out for the season. That was Isaiah Wynn. So maybe we could have looked for an upgrade there. But like you said, offensive linemen are at a premium in the NFL. And so it's hard to find capable starters.
Yeah, I'm with you, and there was a lot. Whereas your two teams, like you may argue for any type of movement, but there wasn't anything that we heard, and unless I'm missing something for you guys, beat reporters, there was nothing I saw on Twitter or anything that stuff was circling. Whereas if you flip over to the Ravens side of the football, there was a lot.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry apparently was on the table. That was a deal in place with Tennessee, but Titans ownership vetoed that. Apparently, there had been a third-round pick going back. I'm not against that, but when I'm gonna touch on that with all these running backs, especially guys like Saquon, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs. These guys are clearly the face of the offense. Derrick Henry has been in Tennessee a long time. He's really the face of that franchise. One of the best players to ever wear a Titans uniform. Sending him to an AFC rival for just a third-round pick, not the best look for ownership. So I get why they did that. I understand the Ravens' desire to upgrade at running back, partnering that as good as Gus Edwards can be. Just having that type of playmaker they are lacking without J.K. Dobbins would take this offense to another level. That said, every team that didn't make a trade, they're going to come out and say, we like our guys. I believe the Ravens do really feel that way. We like our guys. And whereas Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, King Henry would have been nice. I'm not torn to pieces that they're not in Baltimore right now. I'll say that. And
Which
that
one would you
said,
prefer to have?
Saquon. Saquon is just he's still got good legs given the injuries he's had to miss time with. I think honestly the most realistic though is Josh Jacobs. Apparently that's where the other noise was. He wanted to come to Baltimore and play with Lamar. His agent was kind of working that, but the ownership, Davis loves. Someone texted someone in the Ravens circle saying, Davis, if the Raiders were to trade Josh Jacobs, they would expect a fire sale. Like he might would fire everyone in house before they let go of Josh Jacobs. They love him that much. Like it's understandably so. He's kind of the offense, but that said, it's kind of weird that you didn't pay him like he wanted to be
Yeah.
paid. If you feel that way about him, so I'm a little scratching my head on that end. But if his agent's from Baltimore, if he's really that motivated to play with Lamar, come on down in free agency, brother. I'm with it there. So I mean, not upset that we missed out on it now. So maybe we'll revisit that in time. But each year you're looking at the deadline to improve in the areas you can, and when you got a good football team, put those finishing touches on that roster to make a push. But with each of our teams, we are an AFC team. So I think where you see this trade deadline, the two big names move on the NFC side. Philly made their trade earlier with Kevin Byard in the week. San Fran getting Chase Young. I think San Fran and Philadelphia kind of clearly know those two are the best teams in the NFC. They expect to play each other in the NFC Championship game, so they can be a little more motivated to pay a little extra for a final piece. Whereas you get to the Ravens, Chargers, Dolphins, all these teams in the AFC, overpaying for a guy when you could first round of the playoffs AFC side match up with one of these great quarterbacks and get bounced and then be stuck missing a second or third round pick and you had a rental player that walks in free agency, that'd be a bitter pill to swallow. So I kind of see the reasoning for each of our teams not making a move there. That's where I land on this trade deadline day. If you guys got anything else to recap this and what you expect going forward, I'll let you guys take it. If not, we'll just wrap it up and get out of here.
Nah, just real quick to you. I mean, did you not want maybe the Ravens to pick another wide receiver just because you hadn't seen anything out of y'all's wide receiver room? Like, I mean, People Jones went for a 6th-round pick. I mean, I'd be the first to say, I'd be willing to give him a 6th-round pick. I think the only other things from my Charger side is, I was beating the drum for John Johnson at the beginning of the season. I think that still would have been a great addition for a safety somewhere, but I just think for y'all, just the receiving room, we talked just last week on who did we think would be that number 2 guy, and y'all could have maybe went and got an actual number 2 guy.
Well, I will say this, Christian. I'm not upset because unless it was Devontae Adams, I don't think there was guys out there that's more talented than Rashad Bateman and OBJ. I know they haven't looked the best this year, but just pure upside, I don't think any of those guys are on the table unless I'm missing somebody here. What you got, Brian?
Adam Thielen?
No, come on, man. Like, Thielen's playing good. I take Thielen. Like, I'm not against depth. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think, like, is he that much better than Rashad Bateman and OBJ? I know they hadn't shown much.
Listen, I'm gonna go ahead and say
Really?
Adam Thielen was receiving a lot of hate when he was in Vikings, but bro, he looked
good.
number 1
He's been
right now,
good.
son. Hooping.
He's been good.
Hooping. Oh,
But
man,
how
Adam
much of
Thielen put that to the ground, son. He's hooping, dog. Like, without him, Bryce Young would be struggling out there. A veteran, getting open. I mean, anybody that plays the Panthers, I know they're double teaming him, but somehow he's still getting open and making stuff happen.
Go watch QB School with the Bryce Young review. You'll see, bro. Like, he's carrying it out.
Brian said he's sold on Adam Thielen now.
Right now. Like,
he's always been a good player. Yeah, he's always been a good player.
I just think Adam Thielen's going to be good. Like, I ain't going to say, like, Tyler Lockett's to his own standard. I don't think anybody's going to be able to do it like Tyler Lockett, but Adam Thielen's been consistent until they did ultimately get a number one in Minnesota. And then I think with any quarterback, you get a number one that great, you're going to be trigger happy. I think
Yeah,
Adam
for
Thielen was still
sure.
open in Minnesota, but when you got somebody out there like that, who you going to throw it to?
100% agree with you on that, Christian. Yeah, I'm with you all the way on that. In my mind, maybe I wasn't prepared to overpay for Thielen because if he is better, y'all say he's better than OBJ and Rashad Bateman. I think it's marginal.
I take him
I
right
think
now,
Zay
bro.
Flowers. I'm not against it, man.
Right
But
now, bro.
a lot of it. I mean, Carolina's
Right
behind
now.
a lot of games, and Bryce Young has no one else to throw to. So I'm,
I
I'm
hear
just gonna
you,
leave
but
that
still.
there.
Adam
Yeah.
Thielen, bro, ain't no diva like them other two. You feel me? Adam Thielen's a baller out there. Ain't no diva in
Christian
him.
saying, Christian
Hey,
saying,
now
you know,
what?
first guy in, last guy kind of out. Sneaky athletic kind of.
Yeah.
Sneak,
Adam Thielen, boy,
yeah.
sneaky athletic, man.
Check
One
the
for the
skin
team, if
tone,
you know what I mean.
he's
Hunter
not a
Renfro
me
was
guy.
available. That was a guy I heard a lot. Hunter Renfro was available.
No. Oh God,
Golly,
steer clear of any Clemson product for
bro.
me. Jesus, man.
What?
You know me. Hey,
What?
listen, man. And we talked about this last pod. It seemed like the Ravens are force feeding OBJ because they're paying him to be that number two, and they want him desperately to be that guy. Lamar came out and said after the game he was trying to get OBJ in the end zone. They desperately want to get him that first touchdown as a Raven. They desperately want him to be the number two guy. Will that happen in the coming second half of the year? I don't know. Would have been nice to make a move for a guy that's proven himself this year so far, like Thielen. I'm not against that, but at the same time, I've touched on it a lot. Ravens usually nail a lot of these mid-round picks, so I'm never against keeping and hoarding those. So, good stuff, guys. Great trade deadline day in the NFL. A great look at for the second half of the year. Really, I think all three of our teams have a chance to be in the upper echelon of the AFC. Great matchups this week. We previewed, and when we get together again, we're going to take on all of the Sunday action as well as this Thursday night game and get that to you guys. See how these new players look in these new places. Chase Young and company. How are they looking in that San Fran pass rush? It's a scary thought, but let's see it on paper, see what it looks like, and we'll report back to the audience and give them our thoughts and what we think of the second half of the year and how that's going to turn out moving forward. So, as always, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, all that great stuff. Continue to do so. And we will see you guys on Monday morning with the recap of NFL Week 9. Thank you guys. Peace out.
Odell,
The
sorry.
Dolphins.